Hey everybody, welcome back to Inbound Sales Day. I'm thrilled to be here with Mark Roberge, and this is the session I've been looking forward to most today. So to remind everyone, my name is Mike Pici. I'm the Director of Sales at HubSpot. Mark was the third employee ever at HubSpot and led the team from literally nothing to over 100 million in revenue and led us through our IPO. Now he's over at Harvard Business School, where he's a senior lecturer and teaching sales and entrepreneurship. Mark, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Great to see you, Mike.
And another thing too is that Mark is a good friend of mine and my mentor, so I'm especially grateful for the opportunity to rap with you about career growth in sales. And the session title is From the Front Lines to the Front Office, and really how to grow your career in sales. And I personally had a really unique experience doing this alongside of your leadership, so I'm excited to help share some of your perspective and thoughts with the audience.
Is this where we hug it out right now?
Do you want to go back? Well, no, Mark's got a you got a little back hurting, so I don't want to apply too much pressure to you today. So kicking it off. So you've been over at HBS, and we were talking a little bit about before we started recording on like why sales is really like such a foundation for a career in leadership, and you're focused on building leaders now at HBS. Like, how are you thinking about that in your role today?
Yeah, it's been eye-opening over there. Very blessed to be able to have that opportunity. Sales just really hadn't been taught at the college level, never mind the MBA level. And it might be a surprise, but even the dean says that the number one thing the alumni come back with and say, this is the one thing you didn't teach me, is sales. And so that was part of the reason why they wanted me to come over, and a big part of like how I just really felt blessed about the opportunity is to try to change that at a great school. And you think about why is that? It's not very obvious for the 27-year-old that's going what do these HBS MBAs aspire to be? I mean, CEOs, presidents, founders, all these great roles. They don't really connect. That's how critical sales is. But when you think about it, you get out there, you're 10 years post-graduation, you're doing amazing things, whether you're CEO of a public company, whether you're a founder, whether you're a general manager, whether you're a partner at a venture capital firm, you're a partner at McKinsey or BCG, you are selling a lot. You are involved in big deals. You are selling investors. You are selling huge hires. And so, we're starting to put that work together in the business world, and it's really exciting to do that.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, everybody's selling. That's the nature of what we do. And so it only makes sense that we would teach it at all of our institutions. Right? Makes a ton of sense. As I've forgotten to do multiple times today, please tweet at us, #InboundSalesDay. Please reach out to us with your live questions. We're going to be taking them as we go. And with that being said, I mean, so now as I've started to get into sales leadership, and I talk to people on my team, everybody wants to have the conversation about like how to go from their career in sales into a career in leadership. And I think that people sometimes think about that as like that's the path, but it doesn't have to be the path. Like, how do you think about growing your career when you actually do make the decision to start in sales?
Yeah, well, first off, it's hard to imagine a better way to spend your 20s than in a career in sales. It creates so much optionality for all the things I just rattled off, like partners and all these different firms, GMs. It's just one of those things that's hard to imagine a career later in your business life where you would regret investing that time. Right? That's what your question is actually what I posed to everyone that I hired over my career. At some point, usually in the first interview, I wanted to get a sense of where you want to head. And the immediate opportunity paths for someone who's a newer salesperson is one of three areas. One is that leadership route. I want to go and be a manager. I want to go and be a VP. It's great. It's an amazing route. It's not for everyone. And so don't feel like you have to go there to progress, right? A second option is just being a career salesperson. There's nothing wrong with that. I do think as people go through decades of selling high volume transactional stuff isn't for everyone. That can become a little cumbersome. But what you can aspire to is selling the equivalent of jets in your industry, right? Selling multi-million-dollar deals to really sophisticated buyers, C-suite executives. That takes a tremendous amount of intelligence, a tremendous amount of skill. It's a fulfilling career with every one of those conversations can be different. And you can make a lot of money if that's your goal. And the third is just broadening out from sales into general leadership. That could be go start a company. I mean, imagine being a founder. How important is selling to that role. I mean, it's huge.
all you
And on the other side, if you want to stay with the large company route, going to be a general manager, where you don't just run sales, you don't run product, you run finance, you run marketing, you run the aspects. Sales is a great foundation to go in that direction as well. So those are the three routes that I tend to see people direct in. Don't feel stressed at 25 or 26, you have to pick one. That's the great thing about it, is you can go off for a year or two, get some experience with management, and decide it's not for you. You can go off and diversify into something like a founder type role and decide it's not for you, and always come back to individual contributor stuff. So, think about what path might make sense, make some investments, and don't be afraid to experiment.
And you had a actual process that you ran at HubSpot. Mm-hmm. So when I joined, it was pretty set in stone on if somebody raised their hand and they told you hey, Mark, I want to get into sales management, and that's actually my area of focus and interest, you kind of designed a structure to allow that person to be able to grow up within that and actually evaluate if that was for them. How did you think through that, and how did you find that to be over your time?
Yeah, so this could be a blueprint or a brainstorm for folks who are out there on the leadership side, thinking about how to develop leaders. And for the folks that are more entry-level folks, it might be something you try to instigate within your organizations, or find an organization does stuff like this. We had a lot of success, especially early on, with promoting managers from within. I think out of 20 leaders that we had through the 7 years journey, I think 19 of them came from within, right? And so as you're scaling rapidly, you've got to come up with a pipeline of leaders. Just like you have a pipeline of leads and a pipeline of candidates for sales hires, you need a pipeline of leaders. And you need some sort of way for them to learn about leadership and management before they're on the job and decide whether it's for them. So we went through a couple journeys. The first was, I find that great salespeople, they often can be exceptional at one or two areas and then mediocre at the rest. Mm-hmm. That doesn't translate too well into sales management, because especially if you're running sales management like I like to, which is a heavy influence on sales coaching and development, it's really hard to develop someone who has a weakness in an area that you're also weak. So that was the first thing I looked for, was I don't need you to be the number one on the team every month, but I do need you to be good at every aspect of the sales process so that you can be a coach later, okay? So that was the first thing, was demonstrating that. The second thing was we put them into a 12-week leadership program. And it was all about, how do you deliver negative feedback effectively? How do you develop team spirit? How do you deal with conflict? And we found some really great literature. I actually published it in my book on how to develop some basic skills on this. And then we translated it into role plays of the HubSpot context. And a lot of our managers said, you know what, that was awesome. In my first month on the job, I saw every single one of those role plays in real life. And I'm so glad that I got to practice that and know some of the fundamentals. So we go through that, and that gives people a really nice feel for what it's going to be like. And the final step we do is we give a candidate, a management candidate, an actual hire. We say, Mike, you've gone through the whole process. The last step is over the next 3 months, you're going to hire a rep. You're going to manage that rep. You're going to coach that rep. And you're also going to carry your quota. Not for a long time, but you're going to carry your quota too. It's going to teach you to multitask, because you're not going to have 40 hours a week to spend with one rep, right? And so you get to go through the whole process of hiring and managing and coaching that person, which gives you the opportunity to make a few mistakes without ruining a whole 8-person team and losing your whole credibility, and also to see if the job's for you, right? And then people are really prepared at that point to move on to that 8-person team and get rid of their individual quota, et cetera.
The part I think is so cool about that is the piece where you're actually doing that 12-week management development, because in there too, people are actually getting prepped up for this stuff, and they're even people who probably don't decide that they want to do leadership after that still feel like they got a tremendous amount of value out of that experience, and they feel like the company is actually truly investing in their growth and what it is that they're ultimately trying to achieve, which is super cool.
Yeah, I really like that.
So we actually got a question in here from the audience, and what they're asking is, what's the biggest mistake people generally make when they go from being an individual contributor into being a sales leader?
That's such a great question. And it can happen in almost any function, engineering, finance, whatever. But for whatever reason, this happens the most in sales. And that is not getting the work done through people, but doing the work yourself, right? And what I mean is, selling, like taking over the call from your salesperson is the biggest mistake people make. And it's kind of obvious why it happens. It's like you're going through the successful career in sales, you control your destiny. If you're down in a month or quarter, you just double your activity and usually things work out, right? So you control your destiny. And now you move into leadership and you're under the same quota pressure and you want to kind of go into those instincts. You're like on a call listening to a rep and they're doing a B- job. And it's like, how can you just let it go? But you have to. You have to let it go, because if you take over, then number one, you're going to destroy their confidence, because you're always usually going to be able to do it better than anyone you're working with, especially if they're new. Number two, they're going to get lazy because they're going to redefine their roles. Hey, I'll just get Mike on the phone. He'll just do my job for me. And number three, you're not going to scale. You're not going to scale as a leader if you're dependent on doing the deals yourself. You've got to learn to develop people, right? And so that's the biggest mistake that folks make when they move into that leadership.
And I remember working with you through that journey. You were so disciplined on it. I remember you wouldn't even listen to one of my calls until I remember you asking me, so Mike, you had a conversation today. What did the business do? And I would say, oh shit, I don't know. And you go, okay, well, next time you come back to me, that'd be great if you knew that. Yeah. And finally, when I could answer some of your questions, then you were even willing to listen to the call. Yeah. And then after we finally got that to a solid place, you were actually willing to join and give live feedback. But it actually, you stayed removed from the process, but developed so much of the sales person that I was through the process of just asking questions. Yeah. And that was, that taught me a lot very early on. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can really extract scale through that, and it really forced you to step up and own your process. You know, it's like you can almost imagine a day where it's like, as sales managers, like, oh, I need to be on calls all day. Well, reimagine a day where all day you're on preps and postmortems. You're not on any calls. You're just fine from meeting to meeting. We're like, okay, Mike, you got a meeting coming up in an hour. What's your plan for the meeting? What do they do? What's the need that you've uncovered so far? And you're just prepping them. And Mike goes into that meeting 2x prepared than where he would have because of that coaching. Then he does the meeting, you're on another prep call, you come back, how'd it go? Right? So it's like all day you could be on preps and postmortems. It's a little of an exaggerated example, but it proves the point that that's a good way to scale and create effective coaching.
100%. So we've got some more questions starting to fly in now. Keep them coming. We've got Greg, who is actually an HBS alum, and he's asking, what are the top 3 things that you teach MBA students about sales? What do you really want people to leave understanding when you talk to them about what sales is?
Okay. Top 3 might be tough. Let's try to wrap a couple. The number one is we really bring to life selling's about buying. We really bring that meaning to life. And what I mean by that real quick is when I ask the MBAs, what is selling? Like, how do you sell well? They're usually, oh, it's really persuasive presentations. It's being really convincing. It's something that's manipulating, right? It's like, but no, we both know that selling is about understanding your buyer's context and then customizing, first off, deciding if you can help them, and then if you can, explain it to them in a way they can understand, right? So it's about developing trust so that you can earn the right to ask really personal questions about what is keeping your buyer up at night. And then you ask yourself, like, can I solve that? And if you can, just explain to them what they understand. If you can't solve it, you have one of 2 choices. Number 1, walk away and say, Mike, you know what? You've nailed your problem. I don't do that. My buddy does. Here's a referral. And by the way, if you ever meet someone that I can help, let me know.
Yeah.
Or you can say, Mike, I totally get where you're at. I just, I might ask a provocative question that reframes his perception of his problem, that maybe he's not thinking about his problem right. And it reframes it in a way where I can help. I'll only do that if I'm truly believe in that. But that's really what I want to get out of the students, is to realize that selling isn't about being this super polished, persuasive presenter. It's really about understanding true buyer issues and then telling the story in the right way. I won't give you 3, Greg, but I'll give you a second one. And the other one is that there is a lot more opportunity for data and science in this field than people think. It had been a struggle for decades because no one could get their reps to use the CRM. And without capturing data, there's no opportunity for process. But for a variety of reasons, from better tech today, more inside sales selling, more empowered buyers who are online doing stuff that we can track, we've gone from a world where it was like, how do we get the data, to a world with what the heck do we do with all this data? And the explosion of opportunities for science within sales is enormous. So that's the other big thing we try to bring in the classroom.
It's very cool. Now, I don't know, have you ever done this before? Have you ever managed a remote sales team?
Yeah, I mean, Dublin was under my leadership for a couple of years.
Oh yeah,
I kicked off Dublin with G2.
Yeah, so a question from the audience is like, how do you manage a remote sales team? Any guidance there? Like, how does that differ from having the team like in the office and being present?
When you're data driven, it's a lot easier. It's number one, the thing that we did was we kept the daily tab on activity. Now, we were a high volume play, but you can do this on a weekly basis for like a lower volume, bigger enterprise play. But given technology today, you can automatically capture activities and set daily, weekly, monthly goals on those activities to make sure reps are on target. That doesn't take a physical presence, okay? The second thing is, given communication technology, you can have a pretty high quality conversation through video in order to capture all the things you don't get over the phone. Like are they paying attention to you when you're talking to them? Are they glassy-eyed? Are they actually nodding their head? Are they engaged? Are they grimacing like they don't really get it, or they're not buying it? So there's just a lot that can happen there. And it's like, you've really started to minimize what you lose out by that physical presence. And then, you got to get over there once every 2 months or so, just to spend the time, do the dinners, whatever, and just build the relationship. But given what technology's done for data capture and communication, it's a lot easier to do it.
Totally. And on that thread, I guess, how do you, this is one that we have going on a lot at HubSpot. A lot of HubSpot salespeople will want to work remotely, and they'll be in the office and they'll be saying, you know what, like, I'm looking for a new challenge. I'd actually really like to kind of take my work remote, and I'd like to do work while I travel. And that's something that a lot of people here really aspire to. Do you think that people who are doing remote work, like, how do you think about those folks as potential leaders in your business moving forwards? Like, do you think that actually diminishes somebody's opportunity to lead in our business, or do you think that is actually more proving of somebody's ability to be really independent and shows some type of strength?
I think it highly depends. I think it highly depends on the context.
Yeah,
and I do think that we're going to see more and more of tolerance for this type of virtual management. Our friend Ryan Burke at Envision App, that's a company that's scaled to, I think, 300 to 400 employees now. They still don't have an office.
Which is incredible.
No office. What do they have, 70 salespeople? So, I mean, Citrix has been doing this forever too. Our friend John Gauthier, a former HubSpotter, is a big manager there. And obviously, given what Citrix does, GoToMeeting, they want to be able to know how to do this. So, I just think, I personally love the quality of life factors and autonomy that comes with working at home. We capitalized on it greatly at HubSpot, where we put it in almost like the promotion path.
Yeah.
Right? You can earn the right to work at home. And gosh, talk about recruiting bonuses, kind of a nugget that you can use in your recruiting cycle, as well as a nugget that people want to stick around for a long time. If you can pull that off, it's great. There's financial aspects too. You don't need as much square footage in your office and all that kind of stuff.
You can write off your square footage.
Yeah, exactly, right? So there's benefits to it. And, for our culture, 5-7 years ago, it was a challenge if you were like, yeah, I want to work at home 3-4 times a week and be a leader. 2 times a week, yeah. 3 or 4, tougher. That was just our culture. I think we're going to see more and more environments where that's tolerable.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we just got another question from the audience, which I think is actually really interesting, and it's on this concept of growth. But I think it's growth in a different way than we've been talking about so far. So it's on this concept of changing industries.
Okay.
So do you think it's harder for a salesperson to change industries or to actually change from sales into leadership? Like, is a functional change harder? Is an industry change harder? And how do you think about the opportunity of changing industries as a growth opportunity for somebody?
I think changing industry is great. I think that's one of the reasons why a career in sales is exceptional, because you're learning a skill that is transferable as the market shifts, right? Like maybe some people can make an argument you might not need salespeople at some point, but like we're probably always going to need salespeople. And now you're learning a skill that's going to be applicable 50 years from now, even if software doesn't exist, if whatever doesn't exist, you can move it. Now, the only challenge with moving industries is I do think that hiring managers overweight industry experience. So that's the one barrier you can come into. I think smart hiring managers don't overweight it. It matters. It helps when you have industry experience. But I've found that excellence, if I had a choice between someone who was an amazing salesperson with no industry experience versus someone who had decades of experience in my industry and they're an average salesperson, I guarantee the first one would kill it more than the latter. And I don't think hiring managers appreciate that. I think it's because they don't know how to assess for great salespersonship in an interview, but it's really easy to assess for industry experience. So I think that's why they lean into it. So that's your biggest hurdle in this shift, is you've got to get over that barrier or find hiring managers that have a different perspective. But I know, experience in marketing software was not really weighted at all in our hiring sequence.
No, I remember when I interviewed here, and I came from personal insurance sales, right. And I remember sitting in the interview with Catherine Durham at the time, and she says, "You won't be able to do this because you have no clue how to sell software, and you've never sold software before." And my response was just like, "Well, hold on a second. I know exactly what I'm doing. I understand how to understand folks' problems. I understand how to reframe those problems in a way that's going to help them see the opportunity in front of them. And I understand how to build trust with people that I work with. So why don't you think that I would be successful doing this job?" And I think, to your point, if you're building a culture and you're building a team of leaders that feels that the real value is in the quality of the salesperson, not in the information that person comes in with, and that we can teach people functional information about like what we do and how we do it, then you definitely open yourself up to have a lot better talent in your organization.
Totally agree.
And on the topic of personal growth and career growth, there comes this thing where not everybody works in an organization where like people like you are running these programs for leadership development and all of these different type of opportunities to get involved in things that are presented to them. A lot of folks who are watching today are going to be in a seat where they have to go and figure out how to educate themselves on a lot of this stuff. So how do you envision somebody in today's day and age taking control of their own career trajectory and educating themselves on, becoming who they want to be?
Yeah. There's so many opportunities to educate yourself today. And I think I really, really like the millennial generation and their workforce. I think their work ethic and the sort of social impact element of that work ethic is off the charts compared to any other generation, which I think is quite honorable. I do think that they put more pressure, like they kind of like say to their employer, "Why aren't you teaching me?"
Yes.
And it's fine, like employers should teach you, but I don't think they're appreciating how much opportunity there is for them just to like seize this themselves. All right. So, I think there's a question around books. I've read a lot of sales books. I've read every sales blog. I've read, I've done a lot of development stuff. I'll give you a couple examples of personal developed stuff that I did, took my own development in my hands that I've seen translate very well, no matter what level you're at. The first and most impactful one was setting up a peer group of people outside your company, right? So when I first took the job at HubSpot, I never did sales before. And it was really, one of the ways that I wanted to learn it was I grabbed cups of coffee pretty much every other week with a different VP of sales in Boston. So I had done like 30 cups of coffee in my first year. And there were probably like half a dozen of them where I was like, wow, that hour was not long enough. Like we had a lot more to talk about. And they just so happened to be people that were like me. They were like in the early phases of leaders. They thought that there was a change going on and they wanted to do something a little different. So I organized that into a quarterly dinner that we did for 8 years. And the progression of the people that came to that dinner was amazing to see in their career. we had the same cadence for that dinner. We showed up, had a cocktail, whatever, and then all went around the table and said a problem we're having right now. And then went back around the table and for 20 minutes worked on each person's problem. And it was such a safe environment because we had built a relationship. No one worked at each other's companies. No one worked for each other. And that was where I learned the most about sales. And so whether you're a new manager, a new VP, a new salesperson, you can network and find that peer group and develop it. And I think you'll get a lot out of it. The other thing was finding a mentor, which kind of comes from a similar networking process, but you're networking at a different level. And that takes a lot of work. It took me probably I wasn't purposely trying to find one, but it probably took 3 years of networking before one clicked. I had John McMahon, who's amazing, ran 4 or 5 public, company sales teams. So he was really instrumental for me to see, well beyond where I could see what the problems might be. And it has to be a click of a coaching relationship. You want to be coached in a certain way. He or she wants to coach in a certain way. They need to be at a point in their career where they have the time for it too. So it takes one of those lucky moments. You've got to do the networking to find it. But I had him in for 4 hours every month. And it was partially a therapy session for me and partially kind of, again, a safe environment where you're not dealing with your boss and talking about things and there's pushback situations, which can happen in any relationship. There's just listening and understanding, and we had that continuity so he knew our context. In terms of reading, I found that the blogs were more impactful than the books. The books are better codified, but the blogs are shorter in real time, and you can more easily just kind of go in and out of subjects. So I just follow a bunch of people on Twitter and LinkedIn that I like, and click on 1 or 2 articles, a week or so that I dive into.
That's cool. One thing I'd add on the way that people can help themselves along this path is our buddy Brian Balfour, I think, has a really cool concept of how he talks about this, where he talks about your career is really shaped like a T. Mm-hmm. And the vertical part of the T is places where you go really deep. So for me, that's in sales, right? In just pure natural discovery and framing and storytelling, I go really deep there. And so, of course, you spend energy to learn and invest in your craft there. And in a lot of ways, you can teach those things as a way of improving them.
Totally.
At the top, it's more segmented. And those are things that you have general knowledge of, but not really deep knowledge of. And it's interesting, I think in my own career, I've gotten a ton of value out of focusing on the top of that T and not neglecting it. Right. Because even through, even just being in the marketing space as an example, learning about subject matter that a lot of people don't take the time to dive into, like copywriting and advertising and all of these things, that direct mail marketing, right? These things that we're all aware of, but not a lot of people take time to actually learn and understand and get any level of depth in, provide you in just such a meaningful way, just more context into every interaction you have, and people perceive you very differently when you're out there educating yourselves, not only on the places where you go deep, but the places where you don't.
I thought you were going to say fashion and hair products.
No one will ever beat you with hair products. I've been trying, but still not quite.
No, you're totally right. You draw a bigger circle, and especially in sales, it makes you connect with that buyer more. So that's great.
Totally. So we're winding down. We're on the last minute. What's the last thing you want to leave the audience with? What's the one thing you want everybody to take away from the session today?
It's hard. The big things are what we talk about the students. We'll have to build on it. It's just understand, I guess, I think what we should walk away with is it's everyone's duty here to really redefine the perception of sales as a field, right? I think it's gotten a really bad rap, both as, has turned off some of the most talented high IQ people from joining it because of that bad rap. And it has made selling harder because it's not oh, we have this problem, let's call a salesperson. You don't think that way. And that's really the opportunity that this next generation of sellers has, is don't ruin it for everyone else. Don't oversell, don't manipulate, don't sell that bad deal, because that's what gives us the bad rap. The thing I talk about a lot on the road is the doctor profession is probably the profession we need to look to. I mean, that is the highest form of selling. You walk in the doctor office, you see the diploma on the wall, there's tremendous trust. And what does she say? She doesn't say hey, how you doing? I got this new drug, you should try it out. No, she's why are you here? and she like asked you 10 questions. Oh, your throat. Well, what about this? Have you tried this? Does it feel like this? What does this feel like? She looks like that's selling. And then she's like, okay, here's what you got. And this is what I recommend. And you're not like, do you have a case study on that? Or, can I get 20% off? It's like, you do it. And so just keep that in mind as we go out and sell, whether you're a leader building a sales culture or you're an individual contributor. That's where we want to take the profession. It's on all of us to do it.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Again, if you like the content, if anything struck you as especially quotable, #Inbound Sales Day. And thanks again for coming down, man. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we will be back in a half hour.